Okay, let's dive right in. We're about to step inside one of the most tormented minds in all of literature. Rodion Raskolnikov, from Dostoevsky's masterpiece, Crime and Punishment. Now, this isn't just a story about a murder. Oh no. It's really the story of how that one act of violence ignited an absolute brutal war inside a single human soul.
But to really truly get what makes Raskolnikov tick, we have to start with a pretty fascinating question. What if the entire key to his psychological collapse, his whole inner conflict, was hidden in plain sight, in his very name?
And boom, there it is, Raskolnikov. His name actually comes from the Russian word raskol, which means a schism, a split. I mean, think about that. Dostoevsky is basically telling us from page 1, right from the character's name, that this is a story about a man who is fundamentally completely divided against himself. This one word, it's the foundation for our entire analysis.
So here's our game plan. We're going to look at the nature of that schism, then dig into the dangerous theory that caused it. We'll watch the battle rage between his intellect and his conscience, feel the walls of his guilt close in, and finally trace his incredibly difficult path toward redemption.
First up, a soul in schism. You know, this book is so much less about the crime itself and way more about Dostoevsky's incredible psychological experiment. It's a deep, deep dive into the conflict between a cold, calculating intellect and a human conscience that just refuses to be silenced.
So, what on earth could drive a person to murder? Well, let's take a look at the Superman theory, a doctrine born from pure intellectual pride. See, Raskolnikov's crime wasn't just some sudden, crazy impulse. It was born from these radical, nihilistic ideas that were, as Dostoevsky himself put it, floating in the air of 1860s Russia.
This was Raskolnikov's terrible idea, his grand theory. He truly believed that humanity was split into two distinct groups. You had the ordinary masses, and then you had the extraordinary few, the Napoleons of the world. He argued that these special people had the right, maybe even the duty, to step over moral lines, even to shed blood, if it was for some higher purpose or a greater good. And here's how he actually put that theory into practice. It's like a cold, chillingly logical equation. Step 1, he decides, yep, I'm one of those extraordinary men. Step 2, he identifies his target, the old pawnbroker, as just a worthless louse. Step 3, he rationalizes that her death will provide the money to fund thousands of good deeds. The horrifying result? In his mind, it's just a simple net positive. He literally reduces a human life to a math problem.
But Dostoevsky hits us with this powerful warning, because what happens when an abstract, intellectual theory becomes a bloody, physical reality? That leap from an idea in your head to an axe in your hand, well, that's a monstrous one.
And this is exactly where his entire world falls apart. The murder isn't some clean, philosophical act. It's brutal. It's chaotic. It's a mess. And even worse, the unplanned murder of the pawnbroker's innocent sister Lizaveta just completely shatters his neat little calculations. His perfect theory collides head-on with savage reality and is just destroyed on impact.
This total collapse brings us to the true conflict of the entire story: intellect versus conscience. With his grand theory now in ruins, the real battle begins, and it's not Raskolnikov against the law, it's Raskolnikov against himself.
I mean, this table just perfectly captures that schism in his soul. On one side, you have this incredibly compassionate heart. He'll impulsively give his very last coins to a struggling family he barely knows. But on the other side, you have this arrogant intellect, the part of him that genuinely believes he has the right to play God, to decide who lives and who dies. And this right here is why his punishment is so immediate. It's not the threat of a prison sentence years down the line. No, it's a living, breathing torment that starts the second he commits the crime, as his own morality wages a relentless war against his intellectual pride.
So this internal war has absolutely devastating consequences. Which brings us to the prison of guilt. You see, his crime doesn't elevate him, it does the exact opposite. It severs his connection to everyone and everything, throwing him into this state of profound, unbearable alienation. Before the murder, this was his self-image, right? He saw himself as a Napoleon, an extraordinary man, standing tall above all the petty moral laws that govern the rest of us normal folks. But this is the brutal reality after the crime. He is no Napoleon. He is, in Dostoevsky's unforgettable words, a mere trembling creature, just completely crushed by the sheer weight of his own fear and guilt. His ego, his entire theory about himself, has utterly collapsed.
So, if his intellect has completely failed him and his pride has been shattered, how can he ever find his way back? Well, that leads us to our final section, redemption through suffering. The path out of his personal hell isn't logical, it isn't legal. It's purely spiritual, and it's embodied by one single character.
And that character is Sonya. She is his perfect spiritual opposite in every way. Where he's proud, she's humble. Where he's intellectual, she is faithful. And most importantly, while his crime was an act of selfish pride, her own sin, prostitution, was an act of selfless sacrifice to save her family. This makes her the only person who can show him the way out. And Sonya basically gives him a spiritual prescription. It's a three-step process. First, she tells him he has to confess publicly, to literally kiss the earth he has defiled as a sign of true humility. Second, he must willingly accept his suffering, not as a punishment to be hated, but as a process to cleanse his soul. And only then can he begin that final long step, spiritual renewal.
And this is where we get to the great paradox of the whole novel. The real prison was never going to be the labor camp in Siberia. The real prison was the terrible isolation of his own mind back in St. Petersburg. Siberia, the place of his legal punishment, is actually the place where his spiritual resurrection can finally begin.
In the end, Raskolnikov's journey is Dostoevsky's powerful argument against the cold, heartless, rationalist ideas of his day. It's a testament to the indestructible nature of the human conscience, and it leaves us with this profound and ultimately hopeful message that no matter how far a soul has fallen, it can always find its way back, not through intellect or pride, but through love and the willing acceptance of suffering.